Good morning. Welcome to our next Bible study. Today, we have an opportunity to look at the book of Ruth. So, we're going to do an entire book of the Bible. The book of Ruth is only 4 chapters long, not very long. It's a great one if you have children. You could read through the whole chapter. And there's a couple of things that I want to go through today that I think might be a little bit confusing, especially if you're explaining it to younger children, or just you read through the book of Ruth and say, what is that? There are different customs that took place, and it's a different culture and different people, so we should take some time to understand what's actually going on in this story so we can better understand the account of Ruth. So the account of Ruth starts out with a woman named Naomi, 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 and her name means sweet, which is a nice name, when you're thinking about names for children, sweet. And she's married to a guy named Elimelech, and they live in Bethlehem. And living in Bethlehem, all of a sudden a famine comes upon their city. This is probably roughly the year 1100 BC. Famine comes on the city, and they say, well, we got to go somewhere. Let's go to the land of Moab, which would be a little bit farther south, and they think there's food there. So they go down to Moab, and Naomi and Elimelech, they have 2 sons, and their sons are named Mahlon and Chilion. So these 2 sons. So while they're down there, Mahlon and Chilion, they find 2 nice women. They find one of them, I believe, not sure if it tells us which one married which, but one married one called Ruth, a woman called Ruth, who was a Moabitess from the people of Moab, and the other one married a woman called Orpah. It's like Oprah, but the letters are switched around. Actually, I heard a story, I don't have confirmation on this, that Oprah's mother was trying to name her after the person Orpah in the Bible, but switched those letters around for whatever reason, I don't know. But that's where her name came from. Anyway, so Orpah and Ruth are the 2 daughters-in-law of Naomi and Elimelech. Well, then tragedy really hits. So first tragedy was that the famine took place and they had to leave their town. Second tragedy, Elimelech dies. Elimelech, we don't hear why he dies. Maybe it was famine. Who knows? Then another tragedy happens. Mahlon dies. And then Chilion dies. So all of a sudden, Naomi has left her home, has experienced a famine, has lost her husband and her 2 sons. That's a lot to deal with all of a sudden. And she's mourning, obviously. She's very sad. And then she receives word that back in Bethlehem, the famine has lifted. And there is food there. So she decides, I'm going to go back there and I'm going to try and make it with my own people. It's not like they had social security programs back then. You really kind of threw yourself at the mercy of your friends and family and the church to take care of you. And at this point, the Church of Jerusalem is not established. David had not built or planned to build the temple of the Lord yet. Solomon had not built the temple there. David had not set up his palace there. So all these things have not happened. Jerusalem, Bethlehem, they're just cities, part of these different tribes. So Naomi says to her daughters, I'm going to go back. I'm going to go back to my land and my people, and you 2 are young. You should go back and find another husband. And then she says something to them which is worth explaining. She says, even if I thought there was still hope for me, even if I had a husband and tonight, and then gave birth to sons, would you wait until they grew up? Would you remain unmarried for them? No, my daughters, it is more bitter for me than for you, because the Lord's hand has gone out against me. So Naomi feels like the Lord has just singled her out to hurt her. And I mean, losing your husband and then losing your 2 sons and moving away from where you were, she just feels hurt. She's in this state of despair. But that idea of her having sons and them growing up to marry, her older sons, in our culture, we'd think of that and go, that's weird. That is very strange. If somebody dies, is that woman going to marry her brother-in-law? At least in our culture, we might find that a little bit off-putting and weird. Back then, though, this was the custom. That if someone died, the next oldest brother would be in line to marry that woman, take her as his wife, and then have another child with them. And this way, that child would be credited to the person that died. And the reason why this was, it's not just to carry on the name of that one person. It's to maintain the entire family line. So when you have all these tribes that are split up, okay, and then all the tribes are split up into different clans, and all the clans are into different families, they did a very good job of tracking their lineage all the way back. So all of a sudden, if one of the families lost their family line, right? They lost their name completely. The Lord didn't want them to be wiped off the face of the earth, so that eventually, family line after family line would shrink and shrink and shrink, and then pretty soon you end up with, only 2 different families there. He wanted to make these clear distinctions about who the people were and where their land was, and maintain the chunk of land that they had inherited. So this is the system that was set up. And the person that married the widow and had a child with them was called a kinsman redeemer. Kin, right? Family. And then redeemer, right? The one who buys you back. So the family member who keeps you alive as part of this family. And it's a picture of Christ. Eventually in the New Testament, Christ is our Redeemer. He's the one that buys us back. He's the one that makes sure that we are part of the family of God, even though, we ruined our relationship with God by falling away. So, back to Naomi. Naomi tells her 2 daughters, right? Even if this happens, would you wait for my sons? And, then you'd be too old to even have children. You're not going to do that, so just go back. And both of them say, oh, no, we're not going to go back. We're not going to do that. And she says, no, go back. And Orpah, she says, okay, I'll go back. So she leaves and goes back. But Ruth says something different. She says in chapter 1, don't urge me to leave you or turn back from you. Where you go, I will go. Where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people. Your God, my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May God deal with me ever so severely if anything but death separates you and me. So Naomi just makes this oath to her. And that may God deal with me ever so severely, that's her swearing to God. I mean, it's what you would do kind of in a marriage, or anytime you're calling down, not curses, swearing would be just the best way to put it. And many times this is used as a sermon text for weddings, because it's just such a lovely picture of commitment to someone else, not because it's what's best for you, but because it's what's best for the person who you are making the commitment to. And in this case, it's a daughter-in-law to a mother-in-law, but the same commitment we hope is between husbands and wives, where they love each other and they care for each other. But Ruth might have not been a believer before this. She was not. I mean, Naomi even says earlier, go back to your people and your gods. Go. I mean, go worship the other ones. And Naomi, at this point, is upset at the one true God. Not really a great example of faith and caring for the people who you love. But Ruth, right? Even without God, I mean, she might have known something about the Jewish God, probably. I mean, through the ceremonies that they had. But again, your God. This is my commitment to both you and to God. I'm part of this family. So she goes with them, goes to Moab, and when they get there, it's not like she has a job waiting for her. I mean, many of the jobs that were done back then would have been blue-collar, hard-working jobs. You know, you're working in the fields, you're working in the vineyards, you're doing this or that. I mean, if you had your own land, you'd be plowing your field, you'd be organizing all of these different things to happen. But Ruth and Naomi, they have nothing. I mean, they have nothing when they come back. They just have the chunk of land that they left to go down and go into Moab for a while. Now, there was a custom that's going to be, that was set up. It was every 50 years. It was called the Year of Jubilee. The land that someone bought, it was basically leased, and then it'd be sold back to the original family. So that if someone did fall into poverty, their family members wouldn't be punished for years and years and years to come because great-great-great-great-great-great-grandpa, had a gambling problem and lost everything they had and sold the farm. I mean, literally, well, if he's great-great, that's buying the farm, not selling the farm. Anyway, that would have happened. Your family would still get the land back and be able to hold on to it. But Ruth and Naomi don't have anything. And as I said, there's no kind of social system to help them out. So the way that widows and those who could not provide for themselves through their own jobs and their own income, what they would do is they would follow behind the people that were harvesting grain. And the Lord had said, when you harvest grain and you go through the field, only go through it once. Don't keep picking it, just making sure you get every little last grape, every little head of barley. Go through it once and then leave the rest for the poor so they can go through and glean grain. Now, this is what Ruth went out to do. I'm going to go out and I'm going to do this. Now, she is a single woman out there that's younger. She's a widow, but it seems to be younger. And it might have been dangerous. I mean, even though she's among the Israelites at this time, and you'd expect, right? Israelites, all God-fearing good people, wasn't always the case. That there was still rape, there was still murder, there was still abuse, there was still all of these different things. All of the sins that we have today that are awful and terrible were happening back then. And her going out, working alone in those fields, she might have been putting herself at great danger. But she finds herself in a field where she's doing pretty well, and everyone notices how hard she is working. And they eventually the owner of the field comes by, and he's a good guy. His name's Boaz. He comes out and he goes, "Hey, everybody working in the field, the Lord's with you." And everyone yells back, "The Lord is with you too, Boaz." I mean, it's great. It's not like, "Oh, Boaz is here. Everybody, pretend like you're working." Or, "Uh-oh, Boaz is here. I hope, he's not in one of those moods again." No, it's, "Hey, Boaz, great to see you." And Boaz looks out and he goes, "Oh, who's that woman?" And his foreman goes, "Well, she's been working here all day. She's Ruth." This tells her the whole story. And Boaz does what he can to help her. He tells his workers, leave some sheaves of grain behind. He tells them, don't hurt her. Don't mess with her. Tells her, don't embarrass her in any way. If she starts, going into a little bit of the wrong area that we haven't harvested yet, don't be really harsh with her. Then he even invites her over to have a meal with them. Gives her this, it's actually a free lunch. Some people say there's no such thing as a free lunch, but Ruth got a free lunch. So, people, there is such thing as a free lunch. Don't say that. Anyway, so Ruth gets this, goes back home, talks to Naomi. Naomi goes, how'd your day go? And she comes back with 22 liters full of barley after threshing grain. Just a massive amount. Normally, you're just picking scraps, hoping you make enough to survive. No, she gets tons. And Naomi says, well, where were you? She said, well, I was in Boaz's field. And Naomi says, oh, Boaz, he's a family member of ours. That's great. That's wonderful. And then some time passes, and then Naomi says to Ruth, hey, maybe what you should do is see if Boaz will marry you. Seems like a good guy. And we find out about Boaz, he's a little bit older, okay? Older gentleman, but well established. Could provide a nice life for Ruth. And he is out one day celebrating the harvest that he has. And he has this feast on the threshing floor, and he goes to sleep. And as he goes to sleep, it's kind of interesting that Ruth goes out there, and while she's out there, here it is. Chapter 3, verse 7, if you're following along at home somehow. When Boaz had finished eating and drinking, was in good spirits, he went over to lie down at the far end of the grain pile. So he's got enough grain to take a little nap in. And not just a nap, sleep overnight. It's a big pile of grain. He's enjoying wonderful harvest. Ruth approached quietly, uncovered his feet, and lay down. In the middle of the night, something startled the man. He turned and discovered a woman lying at his feet. Who are you? He asked. I'm your servant Ruth, she said. Spread the corner of your garment over me, since you are my kinsman redeemer. Think, oh, that's a little strange. All right? Just the courting of a person. You go up and you say, hey, I'm going to tell this guy I really like him. I'm going to wait till he falls asleep. Then I'm going to uncover his feet. No, it's just completely different custom. The thing is, what Ruth was trying to do, she was trying to wake him up. And the putting the corner of your garment over someone, just kind of that protection, warmth, was kind of like a proposal. It was, they didn't have rings back then. They didn't do that. So it was this way of signaling that I will provide for you. I'll be there for you. And this is how Boaz responds. The Lord bless you. The kindness is greater than that which you showed earlier. You've not run after younger men, kind of says as he's older, whether rich or poor. And now, my daughter, don't be afraid. I'll do all you ask. I know that you're a woman of noble character. However, there's a kinsman redeemer closer than me to you. He was second in line. All right, so again, you go oldest son, second oldest son, all the way down the line, and then you'd go to next family member, next of kin, and then next of kin after that. And there's one person of closer relation. So this is what Boaz does. He says, I can't do this right now. I can't propose to you because that wouldn't be right. Okay, I'm not going to make you any promises. And again, he's a man of noble character. To not say, yeah, we'll get it figured out. Don't worry, I'll take care of it. So what he does is he goes out, and back then, the meeting place for the elders was the gate of the city. So he went out to the gate of the city. He sits down there, and there are 10 different people, not 10 different elders that he calls together, along with the one person that is closer in relationship than he is. And they sit around, and he doesn't try and trick the person at all. Comes up to him, and he says, Naomi, who has come back from Moab, is selling the piece of land that belonged to her brother Elimelech. I thought I should bring the matter to your attention and suggest that you buy it in the presence of these seated here and in the presence of the elders of my people. If you will redeem it, do so. But if you will not, tell me, so I will know, for no one has the right to do it except you, and I'm the next in line. There's no ulterior motive, just brings it to his attention. You have the right. You have the right of way. She's selling the land. You can take that land. You can farm it. You can have, more income. If you want to do that, wonderful. Take it. And the guy says, I'll do it. I will redeem it. Then Boaz said, he says, just remember, on the day you buy the land from Naomi and from Ruth the Moabitess, because she's also part of this inheritance, you acquire the dead man's widow in order that you maintain the name of the dead with this property. So you got to take the widow, you got to take Moab, you got to care for both of them as if they are family, and you have to have a son who is going to marry into this line and then all of a sudden give you another child. And for whatever reason, that is going to jeopardize the company of the kinsman redeemer. Maybe he had another son, only one son, who was getting older, didn't have another child, or maybe he couldn't provide for two other people. I don't know. But whatever it is, he says, I cannot redeem it because it might endanger my own estate. So you redeem it. I can't do it. Can't do it. Then the next verse is interesting. He says, now in earlier times in Israel, for the redemption and transfer of property to become final, one party took off his sandal and gave it to another. This was the method of legalizing transactions in Israel. Even at the time when this is being written, they're like, hey, just in case you don't know what's going to happen next, where a guy takes off his sandal and hands it to another person, this was the custom. Somebody took off their sandal, gave it to another person, and they said, hey, I got this sandal. That proves, you made this thing with me. We can look at your footprint right here. Better than a signature. Just line it up with your foot, especially if you've been wearing it a long time. Like a flip-flop anyway, going down a wrong track. So, Boaz marries Ruth. He has a child with her. When this happens, Naomi is overjoyed, right? Because now her family line is going to be increased. She gets to live with Boaz. Her daughter-in-law has a wonderful family. Her dead husband's name is not going to fall off the face of the earth. All of these wonderful things have happened to her. Now, when she came back, this is kind of an interesting kind of character arc of what happens to Naomi. When she came back to Bethlehem, she tells everyone, call me Mara. Okay? Call me Mara. And Mara means bitter. So her name was Naomi, meaning sweet. She tells everyone, don't call me sweet. Call me bitter. And then when she has this grandchild and the Lord helps solve it, she goes, you can call me Naomi again. Okay? Everything's good. So, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful account of Ruth. Then, one more thing. Let's read the end of it, verses 13 to the end. So Boaz took Ruth. She became his wife. Actually, skip a little bit farther forward. Then Naomi took the child, laid him in his lap, and cared for him. The women living said, Naomi has a son. And they named him Obed. He was the father of Jesse, the father of David. King David from Bethlehem. We know him. We're probably going to talk about him soon. But his great grandfather was Obed. His great-great-grandmother was Ruth, the Moabitess. From a different place, different country, right? But this woman, right? This woman who had grown up in Moab, her whole life worshiping other gods, God still came to her, took her, and used her for his purpose. Even when she was destitute, even when she had nothing, right? From her family line of a widow who has lost her entire family, right? Literally has nothing. Out of her, is going to come the King of Israel and ultimately the Savior of the world, who lives and rules and reigns forever through Jesus Christ, in Jesus Christ. He is Jesus Christ. So, amazing, fascinating story. Hopefully I helped you understand a couple of things like the cloak over the person and the gleaning in the fields and the transfers of property and the whole sandal thing. But if you have any other questions, please feel free to email me. Otherwise, have a wonderful day. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.